Hey YouTube, welcome back and thanks for joining me. It's been a while since my last reptile room tour video. Quite a lot has been going on. Obviously I'll just go run through some of the setups I've got and some of the things we looked at last time and show you any changes that have been made and obviously look at anything new that's been going on. So let's just crack on and let's take a look at the first tank. Okay, so for those of you that watched my last reptile room video, this was my 20-gallon community tank. Since I've decided to completely rescape the tank, previously it just had plants in it with some substrates, just with the view of thinning out the stock and rehoming some of the fish into other aquariums, so I'll show you those in a second. As you can see, I've gone for quite a riverscape looking look with quite simple planting. The planting in the tank is some twisted valve, some spike moss on the wood and some willow moss lower down in the rocks. In terms of stocking, obviously I've got my angelfish in here. I've got 4 silver angelfish and 2 yellow koi angelfish. I've also added some cardinal tetras, which I already had, just a bit of a contrast in the tank. Recently I've added some Oxythinkless catfish from my other aquarium, just because I've had a little bit of an algae bloom. I'm considering looking to black out the tank at some point to try and resolve this. There's also, in the tank, I've got a wood shrimp. I had the wood shrimp for quite a while. He's coloured up quite nicely. He's doing a good job in the tank, so I bought another 2. They haven't quite coloured up quite yet, but they're still doing well in the tank. When I initially set up this scape, I did manage to get a pair of angelfish to couple up afterwards. They have been pairing up since. I'm getting eggs from every about 9 to 15 days, which are doing pretty well. Obviously, being in the tank and not being able to take the eggs out, none have survived so far, which I wouldn't expect. It's something I'm going to look to do in the future when I've got a bit more room. Currently, we're renting at the moment, and we are looking to buy a house at some point, and at that stage we'll be looking to get a designated building or a bigger room to house all my animals and probably expand. In terms of the materials I use for scaping this tank, the wood I've had in my collection for quite a while. I've used it in previous scapes. Decided to add moss to it. The spike moss is doing really well. I've never used this moss before. I attached the moss by using gel super glue. As you can see, the tank's probably been set up for about 2 months now, maybe, and obviously the moss is growing amazingly. So it's something I'll probably use again. I managed to harvest quite a lot of the moss so I can use on other tanks as well. I collected these rocks, brought them home, give them a good clean, bleach bath them, washed them again, rinsed, made sure there's no bleach left, and left them to dry, and then I was able to add them to the tank. Okay, so I think that's enough on this tank. Let's move on to the next. For those of you who follow my channel, you've probably seen that this tank's recently had a bit of a rescape. I managed to rip most of the old plants out of it and decided to just replant it. The terrarium was doing well. I didn't really need to take the plants out, just something I fancied to have a change. There is some pilia growing right at the back, as you can see. It's quite thick. That does tend to overgrow the viv, and I've let that go for quite a while. So some of the mosses have suffered from it not getting enough light. As you can see, there's some branches crossing the stream. As you can see, some of the moss is starting to come back now. If you don't already subscribe to this channel, then please do. For those that already do, you've probably seen this tank's gone through a bit of a makeover recently. For those of you that did manage to catch that video, I have made some changes to this tank since. I have added some aquatic plants into the terrarium, so if you can have a look at in the corner, I've got a Anubius Hosta Folia. That's been set in there for a couple of days, seems to be doing really well at the moment. When I did get it, there was one leaf that was quite brown. That's actually started to do a little bit better now since it's planted in this tank. Also as well, I've added some Anubius bonsai in the water section. You can see one right down the front. I've added one as well near the Hosta Folia. They again seem to be doing really well. There's not much change in terms of the tank as a whole. You know, the electrics and everything are exactly the same, it's just been replanted. The toads are doing really well, as you can see. One of the things I'm looking to change in the future is the lighting. At the moment I've got an extra Terra canopy with some UVB compact bulbs. I will be looking to change that to an LED unit. One, this is obviously save on electricity costs. The frogs don't actually need UVB. It's more for the plants, and an LED would do the job. But again, if you have any questions on this setup, or would like to know a little bit more, then please comment in the sections below. I do try to get around to all the comments I possibly can. With that being said, I think it's time to move on to the next tank. Okay, so I think on my last reptile tour video, I think this was a upcoming project. It was previously my Danio tank, which is called water tank, and obviously I've since, as I mentioned on my angelfish aquarium, I've since obviously rejigged what I stock in the tank. So this is quite an easy tank to maintain. I do roughly probably 1 to 2 water changes every sort of week to 10 days. Obviously clean down the glass and obviously maintain the filter. I currently run this on a Fluval 206 canister filter. For those of you who did see my video and follow my channel, the plants are doing relatively well, obviously quite simple, low demanding plants. I've got some Anubius in there, I've got some Crypts in there, there's obviously some Juncus repens at the back, which isn't doing it as well. I've added some new fish in the tank and altered the temperature of the tank slightly, and the Juncus repens is probably more of a colder water sort of plant, so I'm probably going to remove that at some point. If any of you got any suggestions on what you think would look good as a background plant in there, I do currently have some plants soaking in other tanks at the moment. I am considering using dwarf hairgrass, but I'd love to know what your suggestions would be. So since the last update, there's a few new fish in there. So I've got a couple of Holland blue rams in there. I also have got a electric blue dwarf gourami as well as a flame red dwarf gourami. I've had those in there for the last couple of days, just the gouramis have just come out of quarantine, but the rams have been in there probably for around 4 to 5 weeks, and both again doing really well. Once again, if you do want to know any more on individual tanks, it's likely I've got a video on each one, so please check out my channel. If not, then please comment in the section below and I'll be more than happy to get back to every comment I possibly can. With all that said, let's move on to the next tank. This is my 3x3 by 1.5 foot deep Viv Exotic Arboreal Vivarium. It's a wooden vivarium and it currently houses my male Panther Chameleon Burt. I've managed to waterproof the Viv using acrylic sheets, and this is a completely bioactive setup. So this has been planted for about a year now. The Viv's doing really well, some of the plants are growing in really nicely. There have been a bit of trial and error with some plants. Obviously it's heat in this tank, so obviously it makes it a little bit more difficult to grow things higher up. So this is Burt. He's a male, almost 2 years old. He's a blue bar ambelo cross and nosy Mitsu Panther Chameleon. I've had him for coming up to a year now. He's been in his Viv ever since I've had him. He's really easy to manage. As you can see, he likes a bit of attention. He always wants to come out of his Viv and he's really easy to handle. If anything, he comes out to you. Burt's Viv was probably the first video that I posted on YouTube. I generally had a really good response to the video and people generally liked the tank. I did get a lot of questions and comments on keeping chameleons in anything other than mesh. I actually live in the UK, which is not particularly warm, so for me to keep a chameleon in a mesh enclosure wouldn't probably work for me. I wouldn't be able to maintain the heat or the humidity. Some things you probably just want to take into consideration is obviously chameleons are quite prone to respiratory infections, so you do want to make sure that you do have ample ventilation in the tank. I've actually included extra ventilation in this, as well as adding some fans on which come on occasionally. So since my last reptile room tour video, there haven't been many changes made to this tank other than a few alterations to plants which I have to do from time to time. So the only changes made to this tank, I actually made a light guard for the tank. To make this I used 2 baskets that are intended to be to just put chips or fries in. I've actually just grip tied them together. So in terms of heating this tank, I use a 40% heat lamp, and that's on about 12 hours a day on a thermostat, so it does dim in and out as is needed. Just to cover any ambient temperature needs, particularly in the winter time, as you can see on the top I've got a Reptile radiator. That just kicks in if obviously the temperature drops. Thanks for checking out Burt and his enclosure. If you'd like to see a few more updates or regular updates on any of my animals or enclosures, then please check me out on Instagram. You can find me at John's Rainforest Room. I think that's enough on Burt. I think it's time to move on to the next tank. Okay, so this is my Exoterra tool, which I house my green tree python in. I believe for this snake to be a male. I haven't actually had it confirmed or had him probed. I'll probably sex him at some point, but we'll want to look to breed him in the future. But if any of you know anything about green tree pythons and want to hazard any guesses, then please comment in the section below. Like I said, he's believed to be a sarong green tree python. With localities, I know they are labelled as different parts of Indonesia, but unless you've got any paperwork, it is hard to tell whether they are actually from that part. But this one is labelled as a sarong. I mean, it's taken a long time to change colour entirely. As you can see, there's a lot more green on him since my last reptile room tour video. There's a lot more white scales coming through, as you can see on his back there. So as I said, I had him from a previous keeper. When I did have him, he did actually have mites, so it was the first time I've ever had mites in any of my animals. So a lot of horror stories I've read from other people who struggled to get rid of it, and obviously it infested their rooms. I was quite fortunate. I managed to buy a decent spray and managed to quarantine the snake. I quarantined him for about 2 months, and just making sure that all the eggs had gone. I will be making a video on how I did this coming soon, so if you're not yet subscribed, then please do if that's something you're interested in. So since my last reptile room tour video, and I have posted a video on this tank separately, I do get a lot of questions on how I made this tank. Unfortunately, I didn't actually document making this tank. It was probably the second build I've ever actually made. I wasn't actually making videos for YouTube at the time, so I never actually did that. I'm going to try and find, I've got some footage of it, just pictures and little short clips of videos and things like that. So I'm going to try and collate those together and see whether it's worth getting a video together, if that's something you're interested in. Not much change in terms of the fish is the same stocking. I'm considering removing the fish at some point because they are getting quite big at the moment. Whether I'll replace them with something else, I'm not quite sure yet, but shortly when I do move house, one of the first tanks I'll be upgrading is my green tree python. He's going to get too big for this tank, it's not a permanent home, so we will be building him a bigger viv. Whether I'm going to include fish in this or not, I'm not quite sure. If you have any comments or if you've got any thoughts on whether you'd like to see fish in these tanks going forward, then please comment in the section below. Okay, so since my last reptile room tour video, I think this is the area that's changed the most. So I'll just run through what's on the rack from bottom to top, and then we'll go through the tanks individually. So on the bottom, I've just got a tub that I use as a spare tank, and I'll go through some of the things I do with that in a little bit. Just above that then are my Cameroon Dwarf Ghetto. Just above that then I've got a tank with guppies, a part of a little breeding project I'm going to be doing. The round bowl right at the top then, I'm housing some baby guppies, and at the top I've just got a small quarantine tank. Okay, so this is a 50-litre plastic tub. Something that I think is useful for a lot of fish rooms. Obviously you can use it for a lot of things, for quarantine, for grow outs, if you've got any fish fighting, separate them. I always find it handy to have a spare tank on hand. This is a really cheap way of doing it. This cost me only £2.50. At the moment I'm currently using this as a grow out tank, and I've currently got some cardinal tetras in there which are too small to go with my angelfish. I've also got a small angelfish in there that was growing a little bit slowly, so it was just a good chance for him to separate from the rest of the fish, give him a chance to fatten up. Some of you might remember I had a Plecostomus in my angelfish aquarium. I've since moved him. He started getting a little bit aggressive with the angelfish as well as sort of destroying the tank. This is only a temporary measure of him. He seems really happy in the tank at the moment, but going forward I will be looking to upgrade most of my tanks, and he will be going in a much bigger tank in the future. As you can see, I've used this as well just to house some plants temporarily. These are some plants I ordered online for other tanks and haven't got around to plant them yet, so another good use for that. Okay, so this is one of my newest tanks. This is a 3-gallon just basic glass tank. I'm currently housing 2 male guppies along with 4 female guppies in there. This is only a temporary tank. It's not something I'm going to keep the guppies in long. I'm just using it to quarantine them at the moment. They've currently been in quarantine for about 3 weeks. I'll probably leave them in there for another, say, 3 weeks. Then what I will be doing, I'll be moving the majority of the females into the tub I just showed you, along with a male, and then we'll be selecting a female along with a male, maybe 2 females in this tank, to try and selectively breed some guppies. So this is the bowl I've separated my baby guppies in. When I got some of the females, they were already pregnant, so they did give birth to only a couple. I've only got 3 baby guppies in there. They're probably coming up to about 2 to 3 weeks old now. 2 are doing really well. I do have one with a twisted spine, so I won't be looking to breed that one, but I will keep hold of him. He can go in my community tub. I'm feeding the babies anywhere between 3 to 5 times a day. They are doing really well and growing quite quickly. I did set up a tank to start separating the babies. As it happened, I bought a couple of dwarf gouramis a few weeks ago. I took my girlfriend with me and she didn't want to leave the one lonely gourami on its own. It wasn't doing too well, it was quite quiet, and the shop owner actually gave it to us for free. And I've actually had him in here now in quarantine for about a week, and as you can see he's a lot more lively, he's taking food, he's doing a lot better. I am going to be treating him for internal parasites just as a precaution this week before I look to add him into any of the aquariums. I have quarantined him separately just because he was looking a lot slower, and I will be keeping a closer eye on him for the next couple of weeks. Okay, so this is my Cameroon Dwarf Gecko terrarium. I did buy a trio of geckos. I did want to look to try and breed them. Unfortunately, a month or so ago, I found the male dead in his tank. No particular signs of why he died. I'm not sure how old they were when I got them. The two females are doing great. They're fattening up. They're really active. They're eating. So it was really disappointing to see find the male had died. But I will be looking to get another male at some point to put with the females and hopefully look to breed these in the future. The terrarium itself is one of the smallest terrariums I've ever set up. Being one of the smallest, it is actually one of the most difficult to look after. As you can see, the plants are not doing very well in the tank at the moment, mainly down to the fact I've added some moss in the tank. I think those brought in with them slugs and spiders, and I've been struggling to get rid of the slugs. Going forward, I will be looking to try and rip this tank out completely, leaving the background, but looking to rip all the plants out and completely rescape it, and also eradicate the problem I have with the slugs. I'll try and rescape this and try and resolve this terrarium. It's one of my next projects, so I will try and keep you posted. Again, if you'd like to follow me on Instagram at the John's Rainforest Room, you can check out any updates there, but I will be putting a video together when I actually do this. If you're not yet subscribed, then please do, and try not to miss any updates going forward. Okay, so that's it for this month's tour. Thanks for joining me. If you're not yet subscribed and you're interested in any of the projects or any of the animals or enclosures or anything that I do at all, then please subscribe. I'm also on social media as well, so I'll leave some of my details there if you can check me out on Instagram. If you have any questions or comments or anything you'd like to know any more about any of my animals or any of my enclosures, then please comment in the section below. I'll be sure to get back to you. I do try and take suggestions for videos, so if you have any suggestions, then please let me know. I do try and listen to you, and I will add them to my list. But again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.